This is Defender Radio. Defender Radio is brought to you by the Association for the Protection of Fur-Bearing Animals.
It's the week of June 26, 2017, and this is Michael Howie welcoming you to episode 435 of Defender Radio. Wolves are one of the most majestic creatures on the planet. They're intelligent, social, and thrilling to watch, whether roaming their territory, hunting as a pack, or teaching pups the ins and outs of play. Some people love these animals so much that they want one in their home, and buy wolves bred in captivity or wolf-dog hybrids. And according to the Wolf Sanctuary in Colorado, that's when things can go wrong. More than 100 wolves or wolf-dog hybrids have found a home at the sanctuary since it opened, and the dedicated staff and volunteers have helped find a safe place for thousands of others. Many of these individuals were born in profit-driven breeding operations, sold to well-meaning and loving families, and ultimately surrendered to the Wolf Sanctuary by owners who were unable to care for an animal that isn't entirely domestic and isn't entirely wild. Dr. Shelley Coldiron, Executive Director of the Wolf Sanctuary, joined Defender Radio to discuss the difficulties people find in raising wolf-dog hybrids, what special needs they have, the daily operations of running the sanctuary, and the individual personalities, quirks, and lives of the animals in their care. The reasonable place to start this conversation is to talk about the beginning of Wolf Sanctuary. So, where did this organization and this beautiful place that you're now running come from?
Well, it started in 1994 with the founding couple, which is Pat Lenteri and Frank Winland, took in a neighbor's wolf dog puppy when they couldn't handle it anymore, and which it's kind of the typical sad story about these animals where people are attracted to them as puppies and soon realize that they're generally not equipped to take care of them. So they took that puppy in 1994 in LaPorte, Colorado. So it's LaPorte. And the word got out that they were being able to take in wolf dog puppies, and they ended up having, wolf dog animals, and they were not able to care for those animals where they were living. So they bought the property where we're at right now and moved there in 1997. And Wolf became a 501c3 nonprofit in 1995.
And since then, how many wolves or wolf dogs have called the sanctuary home?
We have had approximately 110 animals that have been provided sanctuary at Wolf.
That's incredible.
And we also, what we do is we're connected in a nationwide network where we communicate with other rescues, sanctuaries, and homes when we get contacted nationwide by people or bad breeders being shut down to try to place animals. So through that particular network, we have helped a couple thousand animals find safe haven through that.
Well, and I guess that's maybe where we need to sort of now move in the conversation. And this is one that comes up a lot, I think, in sort of the Venn diagram overlap between what I do and what you do, is people who want to have some kind of a wolf dog or a wolf puppy, and end up, it's generally not a good idea to have a wild animal as a pet. We'll just throw that out there. But the situation with wolf dogs and these hybrids is very, I would say, almost unique amongst a lot of pet ownership because they're not domestic nor are they wild.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned that a lot of people that get these, they fall in love with them as puppies. Why are people breeding wolf dog hybrids? What's the intent?
Money. Let me kind of back up and kind of go over this particular industry. Typically what happens is these breeders will sell these puppies from as little as $1,500 up to $5,000. And they generally, and we actually are having, we just took in a new puppy who's gone through this experience. They generally take the puppies away when they're as little as 3 weeks old from their mother, with the idea that when they open up their eyes, they're going to imprint on people, and in particular the people who buy them. So, they don't learn the proper social skills of being a canine, and they don't fit into the human world. So immediately we set these poor animals up to be failures. And so people will get them at 3 weeks old, and they're cute as puppies, and these guys progress in their development very quickly, and they're extremely smart, and they're not a dog. But people want to think that they can actually handle them and raise them like they do as a dog, but they soon find out that they have a predator-prey tendency. They need to be constantly stimulated, and they don't provide them the proper enrichment. They chew up the furniture, dig through the drywall. They kill the neighbor's cat. They go after the neighbor's small dog. And they also have a personality I like to describe as that it's kind of like a cat in a canine's body. So typically where you can train a dog to want to make and please you, these guys could really care less in general. So the breeders do this because it's in some states it's unregulated and they make money. And that's the whole reason behind it. And then other people are attracted to it because I believe they feel empowered by being able to think they can control the wild.
Yeah, there's got to be an interesting psychology behind this, and it really sort of, when you have the conversations with people, and my experience is primarily online with these conversations. I had one recently in an advocacy group, and someone was saying that, what's the difference between this picture of a wolf and this dog? And his point was wolves are just another breed of dog. And I said, no, they're not. That's wrong. We've got like 15,000 years of domestication and evolution in the mix here. And being able to get that across to people, thinking, well, what about, they see this new dog on TV? I think a good example might be Labradoodle. All of a sudden, people wanted this kind of dog, so they made this kind of dog. And that's a new thing. So that's what we're doing with this wolf, is we're just introducing some dog genetics, and that'll even it out and everything will be okay. But again, that's not how genetics work. That's not how DNA works. And I think, too, when you then talk about the behavior, what's fascinating is at 3 weeks, very simple behaviors like bite inhibition have not yet been learned.
Right.
And that is what can very certainly keep dogs safe, both in terms of their relationship with other animals and in their relationship with people.
Right.
And that's the learning to, if you bite and you bite too hard, the game goes away. That's how they teach each other. And I believe wolves actually have a very similar early learning curve in that regard. And
they do. And that's one of the tragedies when these breeders take them away from their siblings and their mother, is they don't learn those, hey, that's not allowed, and I'm going to correct you. And so, like I said, we set them up to be a failure because they're not properly socialized. They don't know how to be themselves. And so they fall into this quagmire of not being a dog, not being a wolf, not being domesticated, not necessarily being tame. And so when they reach around 2 to 3 years of age, that's just when they're mature. That's usually when a lot of things start to go really wrong. Well, and that's what we hear even with people who try and have raccoons as pets, is at first it's lovely and this little raccoon is learning. And then around 2.5, once they really hit that sexual maturity, and they decide this is what I want, and those instincts start to kick in full gear, they get very, very unhappy with someone trying to keep them in a house or on a leash or something like that. And so, like here in Colorado for the state, states, counties, and cities can have their own regulations. But in the state itself of Colorado, if you have can claim even a small percentage, even 2% of a dog content in a wolf, it's still being considered and handled as if it were a dog. So in Larimer County, where we're at, wolf dogs and dogs are treated the same for regulations. However, again, it's not recognized for a rabies vaccine. So, I mean, it's just a lot of conflict.
Yeah, that's really weird. And I mean, the wants and needs of a wolf or a wolf dog are going to be vastly different than those of a dog. And again, you can't discount tens of thousands of years and hundreds of thousands of generations, particularly. And I'm guessing, and you can please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing a lot of these people who breed wolf dog hybrids, it starts out with one wolf they have procured through unknown means, and then they just throw another dog in there. It's not done to the level, and I don't want to get into a huge debate about dog breeding on this conversation, but there are, you can say, good dog breeders who pay attention to pedigree, who pay attention to behavior, who watch very closely how lines are crossed and so on. I'm guessing there is not that degree of what you could call professionalism behind it.
Right, and you're correct. A lot of these people who are, there are some, I hate breeding them, but there are some higher level breeders who do pay attention to the lineage, but majority of them are just like backyard breeders, and they will go and get some type of northern breed and cross it with a wolf, so then that they feel that they've now got a wolf dog that should have some domestication to it because it's got dog in it, and that's not true. And we've been involved in helping to shut down some really nasty breeders, and their whole purpose, like puppy mills, is to make money.
Yeah, and that's, you can track almost all the woes in this world to greed. And I try to understand the attraction people have. And you hinted, like, there are various reasons we can come up with as to why someone would want to have an animal like this in their home. And of course, wolves are absolutely majestic creatures. I don't think anyone, particularly anyone listening to this podcast, will doubt that or argue that. And I am a huge dog lover, and I've got multiple dogs in my home, one of whom is pacing around and making a lot of irritating background noise as we speak. For listeners, that is, of course, JJ. And I don't understand, though, why you would think, or why you would want a combination of those two things. I don't understand how the consequence of that is not seen, and understand the desire for it. How are people, when you get to the situation, as you said, and I know many of the animals you've brought in are those who are sort of the equivalent of an owner surrender. I'm not sure what the proper terminology would be for you. Who said, I had this cute puppy and now it's gone too far. And as one could predict, and as you've said, you've got a wolf in your house, pretty much, a wild animal, who, while they may have attachment and emotion for you, also have desires and needs we simply cannot meet. What is the attitude of these owners when they do have to eventually say goodbye to this animal?
Typically, if the majority of people that we see when they get them as puppies, they do have an emotional attachment. So majority of them are devastated, but they've kind of reached to a crisis point where they're desperate to rehome this animal. And we hear varying reasons why, and they become pretty typical, like what I described earlier. So sanctuaries like ours are almost always at capacity, and we can't always help them all, but we, through our rescue coordinator, Susan Weidel, we do standardized questions that we ask people to answer to try to help to understand that animal's background and their personality, and we get pictures, and then we distribute it in our network to see if we can find some place where somebody might be able to step in. And sometimes we just know that we can't help them all, and that really cuts at our heart too. And this particular industry, it's unregulated, and so we don't know how much how widespread this is and how many animals there are that are bred each year. but the estimate runs between 200 and 250,000 per year in the United States. And approximately 90 to 95% are euthanized by the age of 2 or 3. And, we get people who are desperate to find out if their animal has wolf in it. And I stepped in as the executive director in 2012. When I first became the executive director, I'd look at the animal and I'm like, I don't know, is that a dog? Does it have wolf in it? But over time, you start to learn what to look for. And if we get someone who sends us, I'm desperate to know, does this have wolf in it? I'm thinking about giving them up to a shelter. And we also find what breeders will do is they'll take varying northern breed dogs, breed them, and then pass them off as wolf dogs. So there's the other side. And we'll look at the animal and we say, we get videos, we look at them, get their temperament, we say, you do not have a wolf dog here. This is probably a husky mix or a Malamute mix or something else. And some people really get upset because they paid over $2,000 for this animal, and they're going to say, yes, it is a wolf dog. And we tell them, if you do that and it's not, and it ends up in a shelter, it's more likely it's death sentence, because shelters can't take on that liability of placing a wolf dog in a domestic home.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an understandable situation for them to be in, because with, temperament testing is not 100%. I don't think it can be. And those who excel at it, even though, there's always going to be that fraction. And when you're dealing with an animal where you do not have the ability to understand its instinctual makeup or their desires and wants the way we can with most dogs, regardless of breed, we can kind of figure out sort of that boundary of where they're at. Although I think it's interesting when we talk, and I might end up having to put this somehow into an intro or something, but talking about the northern breeds, the Malamutes, the Huskies, these dogs are extraordinarily high energy and have an extremely high drive.
Yes.
And that's something I think a lot of people don't know. I used to love the look of Siberian Huskies when I was a lot younger, and then I spent time around them and said, no, thank you. JJ, the as I call her, Hamilton Hound, is a Shepherd Hound mix, who got the I don't care from the Hound and the I'm not going to do what you tell me from the Shepherd. So she's a lot of fun that way. Anyway, it's very interesting that people may think this is a wolf dog because of this behavior, because of this look,
right,
but that's
right.
actually just a very common dog that you're not prepared for, and I think that's ultimately when we talk about animals and pets, is trying to have an understanding of what we're getting into ahead of time. And unfortunately, that's not always possible. And then, of course, we have celebrities out there who say, oh, well, you can just make this noise and touch your dog and they'll do what you say.
Exactly.
And I've got multiple episodes for those people who are interested in listening with professional dog trainers and researchers who can explain why that doesn't work. Look in the back catalog. But moving forward, I think what's really neat, one of the first things on your website, wolfsanctuary.co, is you're not open to the general public. And I remember when I spoke with your organization a few years ago, the same thing was talked about. And I think this is very, very important to talk about. Why do you not have people coming in and spending time and I know there are physical restrictions due to the work, but also in regards to the care of the animals. Why do you not have people coming in to meet them?
Well, one of the things is where we're currently located, we can't be open to the public. We're down 2.5 miles through a private road, which goes through other people's properties. So we're not allowed to be open to the public where we're at. We're looking to move the sanctuary to a place where we can be open to the public, and we'll have limited exposure to the animals. And because we're not open to the public, that makes it very challenging for us for being able to provide financial support to run the sanctuary. It's really difficult to ask people to help you with your cause, but you're not able to let them see what you're asking them to support. And the additional thing is we're in a deeply sloped ravine where we're off the grid. We don't have a good, reliable source of electricity. Our wireless service is limited, so we can't even set up webcams. So we're always challenged on trying to find support to be able to keep doing our mission and providing a wonderful place for animals. And we make it work, but it's always a struggle. But when we move, we're going through a permitting process with the county. Assuming that we do get through this, what we'll do is we'll have scheduled times during the day where people can make appointments online to come and visit wolf. And they would only visit those animals that are comfortable being around people, meaning seeing people. But the ones who are not comfortable with people will be in a position where people can't interact with them. And also the other thing is you always got to be careful about having, our number one thing is it's always about the animals, their care and their comfort. And so we're not going to let people come in and just rush up to our animals and get all over them. They will have the ability to see them and understand their story, but it's not going to be like a petting zoo or something like that.
Yeah, and why is it important? And forgive me for asking an obvious question. I really want to nail that home. That not all of these wolf dogs or the animals want to be around, and why is it important to make sure that they're not around people if they're not comfortable?
Well, wolves in the wild really do not want to be around people. They will try to be as far away from us as they possibly can. And so some of our what we call our higher content animals, which would mean the ones that have what we believe is a higher amount of wolf in them, are just uncomfortable being around people. And the other things with these animals too, when people adopt them, they don't like change. They like something that stays the same, and they feel comfortable in that. So we don't want people to causing them any stress or anxiety because they're seeing a lot of people or hearing noises they're not used to hearing. And the other thing too is people think that these animals are vicious. And in general, wolves in the wild will not attack people. If you go and you look for a historical recount on how many times wolves have actually attacked humans, you could probably count them on one hand. And it's generally been, a very sick old animal, and they're desperate. Generally, wolves will just stay away from us as much as they can. But then there's also the fact that what are you crossing this wolf with? And is it with a type of dog that makes some of the behavior issues a little bit more challenging? In general, wolves will, if you start to make them uncomfortable, they'll huff at you and go, oof, 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 oof. And that's basically, please, I'm uncomfortable, stay away, give me some space. And they give you a lot of warning, whereas some dogs, with the way that we've bred them, they give you no warning. So when we have wolf dogs, what is it that you're going to get here with that behavior? And that's sometimes what we do at Wolf is we learn the animal and we always give them the space that they need, and we provide for them what they need to have. We never make them do anything that they don't want to do.
And I want to ask you about the sort of the day-to-day, but first I'm looking at the website, and as we were just talking about the content of the wolf and people not sure whether or not their animal is wolf, you look through the pictures, and some of these animals, you look at them and you say, that's got to be a wolf. You look at some of them and you say, I think it's Reese, looks like a coyote to me. And then a few of them, they look like huskies or malamutes. I would not think there's any wolf if I saw this dog on the street, I'd go, yep, that's a malamute or a malamix. So that is a really interesting, just from the face of it, you can't tell necessarily.
And so it's a combination of physical characteristics, phenotyping, and then their behavior as to how we rate them. And the way that we rate them is low, medium, and high, low amount of wolf to a high amount of wolf, high content. And, we don't know that we have any pure wolves. We have some that are very high content. And like Reese, I would call her mid to high content.
Mm-hmm.
But, just by looking at a picture, that's a single picture can't tell the story.
Yeah, of course. And, it's fun to look at too.
And the other thing too is some of these genetic tests, so some of the shelters may send out for a dog that comes in and has been released, or they've captured it and brought it into their shelter, and they'll set it out for genetic tests, and they typically go with the cheapest test. And some of these tests are really fallible. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be careful about that. I mean, if you want to do really good genetic testing, you need to be able to put the money into it and go to the high quality. Because in the end, dogs came from wolves. And so how are you going to distinguish that? So you have to be careful about trying to tag your animals, or whether it's a wolf dog, and not have the right testing to do so.
Yeah, and that's, I did DNA testing on one of my dogs years ago. And it came back just absolutely so far off. It was silly. And it is very much a situation of you get what you pay for.
Exactly.
Now let's move back into the fun stuff, the day-to-day. What's it like going to work and having wolves there? What happens for the wolves every day?
Well, first off, let me say that it's magical because these animals are so unique. And what our daily chores are, first off, we make sure their animals have access. We give them raw meat 6 days a week, and then we supplement that with kibble feeders so they can have access to dry kibble whenever they want. So our first chores in the morning are to make sure that everybody gets their medications, and then we make sure that they've got their water and their kibble, and then we poop scoop. Then after that, what we do is we do any of the maintenance work that needs to be done. And for those animals who enjoy socialization and going out on walks, then we provide that for them, and then brushing the ones we can brush. And so it's just really good to have that time with them and enjoy seeing them. And as I say, the biggest reward is, the majority of the animals we get have come from some pretty horrific backgrounds. And the greatest joy is watching these downtrodden, dispirited animals gain confidence, feel free, and watch them be happy and healthy and just living life to the best and the fullest that they can. And that's the reward, is watching that transition.
Absolutely. And that, I think, is frequently true of everyone I know involved in rescue, whether it's wildlife rehabilitation, dog rescue, or in your unique situation with the Wolf Sanctuary, is you can very visibly see those successes just sort of blossom over time. And it's sort of a nice reinforcement of everything you do. It's interesting talking about sort of their day-to-day too, because you do have this mixture of personalities. So, you go poop scooping and you provide them kibble, but at the same time, you give them the raw meat diet, which you can also say is very beneficial for domestic dogs. What about providing interaction in terms of, prey drive? Or can you sort of simulate that with toy drive?
Well, we don't try to do anything. I've had people say, well, you got live chickens we'd like to donate to you. We're like, no, we're not going to do that. But these guys are used to being essentially hand-fed by people, by humans. And so they really don't know how to, and if they were released into the wild, they wouldn't really know how to care for themselves other than maybe scavenging from garbage. So we don't try to do anything like that, but we do provide enrichment, like some toys. Some of them love.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Not to engage their actual predatory behavior, but to stimulate the prey drive through toy drive.
Yeah, we give them toys and balls and some other things they enjoy playing with, and each one has their own favorite thing to do. And so we do work on enrichment, and our sanctuary too, what we do is because in the wild, wolves are a family pack. It's the breeding pair, and then the children stay with the pack until they're around 2 to 3 years of age. Then they'll go off and either form their own pack or join another one. So you got the genetic diversity that goes on. But what we're doing now is we're taking unrelated individuals and putting them together and say, here, you got to live your life together. So what we do is we pair them, a male and a female. And in, their enclosure size will go anywhere from a third of an acre to an acre in size. And so that's their home. And they're spayed and neutered. And if we ever have more than 2 animals per enclosure, it's only 1 female and the rest are male. 2 females do not get along. So, so they've got a lot of room to roam, to dig dens. We give them toys for enrichment, and we're continually looking for other things that we can provide them. And pretty soon we're going to be making some meat sickles for them. So they get some meat sickles to play with in the summer heat. And so we just do everything. And then we also provide water troughs where we fill it up with water, and they love to get in there and splash like kids and throw water all over the place. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there is a dog sport, which I'm going to try and find while we speak. And I would imagine that it might be lure coursing. That's the one. That might be something that they would enjoy. And that's a very simple mechanical thing to install. Have you ever seen that take place?
Yes, I have. That's fun to watch them go after that.
Yeah. Of course, I tried getting JJ to do it once, and she chased it for like 10 feet and went, I'm getting food later anyway. I don't need this.
That's exactly it.
Is that what the wolves do, or is that, do you think they would act that way?
It depends on the animal. They're all different. And, we've had some people who are saying, well, God, what happens when there's wildlife in the area? And these guys, we've had free roaming cattle come through the sanctuary and be like 10 feet from their fencing. We've had horseback riders go through the sanctuary, turkeys, deer, coyotes are the ones that they get a little excited about. Fox, bears, and they're like, I'm good. Hey, how are you doing? I don't need to do anything for my food. I know my humans are going to take care of that for me. So,
yeah, that's fascinating. And I imagine it's the kind of thing you could probably just get lost sitting and watching them all day.
Oh yeah, and we've got this one couple, Zoe and Loki, and those two playing is so funny to watch them play together, and they're a really good match. And they make so much noise, and if you didn't know better, you'd be like, "Oh my God, they're fighting!" They're just playing, and you learn how they do things, So it's fun.
In terms of the spaying and neutering, does that impact their behavior in a measurable way? I
don't think so. And that's hard to say because we've never had an animal who's been with us who hasn't been altered long enough to observe it and see changes that happen afterwards. But as a sanctuary, our mission is to not contribute to the problem.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
it makes it, it's a sort of you consider that it's often pointed to as a behavioral fix, so to speak, for a lot of domestic animals. So I'd be curious as to whether or not that plays a role at all.
I don't know. And what's kind of interesting, so dogs can go into heat 2 to 3 times a year, but wolves go into heat once a year. And that's generally around December, mid to late December. And then they birth usually late March into April. And even though our girls have been fixed, they'll still seem to kind of go through a little bit of a cycle in that time. And they can get kind of grumpy. So we, at those points are like, okay, well, Izzy's going to be grumpy for the next couple of months, so we just need to give her space. So it's kind of funny.
Well, and they're still going to respond to a change in season.
Yeah.
Right? Like I see
exactly.
that with our dogs. The ones like JJ or our Lab Baloo who have a heavier coat and love the snow. As it starts to get cold, their energy seems to go up. They're getting excited. This is something they're liking, and they don't get as tired as quick. But then the boys who have very, very, very thin coats, as the temperature starts to get cold, they start to settle down a little more. So even just in our domestic mutts, we see it. So I imagine there must be some kind of behavioral response. And that's an interesting question that's on your FAQ that I would not have thought to have asked, but I guess it's something that people wonder about is what happens in the winter, because they live outdoors all year. And it again, to me, is kind of an obvious one, but they are quite happy in the winter in their enclosures, aren't they?
Oh gosh, they're so happy. As soon as the summer comes, and generally what happens is you see activity level in the morning, and then they pretty much just sleep for the rest of the day until dusk and nightfall, and then they'll wake up and be a little bit more active. But in the summertime, they're much more quiet. But when a winter rolls around and the snow starts to fall, they get all frisky and happy. And they just love the snow. And it's kind of funny. We had a really record-breaking mid-month snow in May. We had like 3.5 feet of snow, heavy snow. And while we were struggling to stay ahead of the storm, you could just see them just laughing at us, stupid humans. Don't you see how much fun this is? And we're like, no, this is not fun. But and they have a shelter. We have insulated shelter for them with bedding and insulation and stuff. But even on some of the coldest nights where you think, oh my gosh, they've got to be inside cuddled up together, they're outside like, this is great,
Yeah,
so
quite comfortable. I met a couple who fostered a dog years ago who had a Malamute, and they had built him a beautiful doghouse outside. The husband and the couple was an engineer, and it was nicer than apartments I've lived in. It had a flap that had a light automatically go on and off. It had AC and heat. He had a bed and bowls and the whole, like, it was an awesome doghouse, because they found that when he was outside, he wouldn't want to come inside. So they figured, okay, we'll build him a house outside, so when it's snowy, he can still be safe and warm. And they went out to check on him, and he's laying outside of the house, watching the snow. Like, these animals, they've evolved to enjoy that, to thrive in it. And another good question on your FAQ, cheers to whoever did this, do you have a vet full-time on staff? And I know the answer to this because my wife and I watch Dr. Jeff.
There you go. Well, like I said, when I took over in 2012, we had one volunteer vet. And what I did was I worked on putting together a volunteer vet committee. So we had a number of vets who had varying expertise that we could call upon to come and help us with our animals. And we recently hired a vet part-time now. And this is, we keep getting more and more fortunate on that part. And she also is a veterinarian for the Wild Animal Sanctuary in Keensburg, where they have lions, tigers, and bears. And so, our vet care is high quality, and they are our priority. Their health and their care is a priority. And Dr. Jeff came out last year to film at our place and help us with a couple of our annual exams. So that was a great treat for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Dr. Jeff, Rocky Mountain Vet on Animal Planet, for those who are interested. And I think what I find most fascinating about what you guys do is the opportunity to both get to know these animals as individuals, but then also recognize the problems that are posed by these individuals in a strange way. And that's kind of where we opened with, and it might be sort of the best spot for us to close with as well, is as animal lovers, I understand wanting to be close to wildlife. I live in the city, so I get close to squirrels primarily when my dogs let them near our house. which is a funny story because on the first day we moved in here, we have a backyard in our apartment, and there was cats and squirrels and raccoons. On the second day, there was nothing. They learned very quickly that our backyard was not a fun place to be anymore. But, it's interesting that we want to be close. We want to appreciate these animals. But I think the wolves, the animals for whom you care, are kind of a representation of what happens when we don't understand that wildlife needs to be
exactly.
wild.
And I agree with that 100%. And ultimately what I would like when we're able to do this, I would like us to be able to work on legislation to ban breeding of exotics. You can go to some states and, you need to have a license for your dog or your cat, but there's no regulations about owning exotics and providing their care. There's no licensing that's provided. And that includes tigers, lions, bears, and other things. And it's wrong for us to try to bring them into our homes, try to control them, and put them in a setting that's not natural for them. We need to keep wild things wild, respect them, and give them the space they need to thrive and live out their lives.
You can learn more about the Wolf Sanctuary, see images of the wolves, and find out how you can help them move into a new, improved location at wolfsanctuary.co. That's it for this week, folks. For Defender Radio, I'm Michael Howie, reminding you to stay informed and stay strong.